Weekend Warriors, welcome back to the workshop. In this video we are going to be making an alternate for this bad boy here. This is the original Hirsch knockoff multi-use work table. It folds up, it's got a power plug, everything. Hirsch work tables are no longer on the market. So in episode 2 we did 8-part series building down to the minutia of how to put everything together on this one. I have since removed the top we made in that video, and it is installed over on my table saw. So I've got one piece of stationary material, or semi-stationary machine, that I've got both my table saw and my router on. In this case, I put on a real thick tabletop on it, and it's been my utility work table for this 6.5 years since we built it. You've seen it, if you've watched my screen printing videos, you've seen this thing, 62 times now. But what we're going to do today is build a piece that will accommodate a circular saw or a router or a squirrel saw or all three. And we're going to do it based on a crate. So not only will we have a piece of machinery that will help us build the projects we've got coming up, but we're also going to have some partial of a storage solution for our tools. Instead of creating something else that's going to take up more room, we're going to be replacing, say, a store-bought milk crate or whatever to store our tools in. So, good thing on both hands. So let's get the pieces out and let's get started putting it together. So, hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, we're back and we have all the pieces. Now, this project, it's easy because it's mostly 1x2s and one piece of sheet goods, some 3/8 inch plywood. Now, the 1x2s, you can buy 1x2s already cut in 8-foot lengths at most of the home stores, and I'm sure at any of the lumber yards around. Furring strips or just plain pre-cut 1x2s. So there was no ripping needed for this project, which is why this jig was so perfect for it. So, using this jig, I cut out all my pieces. Now, I know in the previous video I said I needed 8 of the 19-inch and 8 of the 16-inch, but as it turns out I only need 6 of each. And then I've got 4 12-inch pieces. Now we're just going to make a basic crate, which means we're going to do lap joints with glue and nails. Now I'm going to use my air nailer just for speed's sake, but I could just as easily glue it, clamp it, and use finishing nails in it to get this thing going. So I'm going to move around a little bit, let you see the first little bit, and then I'll put it all together. So hang on. All right, here we are with the start of our assembly. Now, what I've got here is I've got a metal plate. Now, you don't have to have a metal plate. You can just have a nice flat piece of wood. Piece of fresh plywood would be great. It's just the top of this table is pretty beat up and not exactly even. So I'm looking to make this crate square and strong. So I want a flat surface to work off of. At the top of the plate, I've clamped up a fence because it makes it a little bit easier for me to push that up against the fence and then push the piece I'm going to join up to it against the fence, and that way I know my tops are nice and flat and square. Okay, and then I can square it up with my square, make sure everything's good, and then shoot it together. But before I can shoot anything together, of course, I must add glue. I'm going to get some glue on both sides of the joint here. Now you're going to notice my wood isn't pristine because I didn't go and buy pre-cut pieces. I cut my own 1x2s. And for you guys that are new to this, when I say 1x2, that means 3/4 of an inch thick and 1.5 inches wide. It doesn't mean actually that it's going to be 1x2. All right, so get those guys grounded up against the fence. Get them squared up.
Now at this point, I could clamp it and just use the pressure of the wood to clamp it in place and then drive some nails in by hand. But my fingers don't quite work with itty tiny things just yet. So I'm going to keep using my air gun here and drive some 1 1/4 inch brads into it to hold it in place. Now I did it on one side. It won't hurt me to drive a couple in from the other side too. Oh, it sounds like the Confederate Air Force is out playing today, or Commemorative Air Force, whatever they call themselves now. That was a warbird that went over for sure. All right, so there's the top edge done. Now I'm going to do the middle. And for that, I've got a center line marked out, so I'm just going to bring my rafter square up. I'm going to clamp it into place. Spring clamps are wonderful little items, in case we didn't mention that for our work chest here. Little glue there, little glue there. Put it into place, make sure it's square, make sure my end is flush with my edge. And so now it's just a matter of wash, rinse, repeat. Only we're going to, since this side is assembled, we're going to use the combination or the carpenter square all the way around again, doing just the same thing we did before, lining it up, gluing it in place, and then shooting it together. And I'll repeat for the other side. So when it's ready for the 19-inch stretchers to go in, I'll be back. All right, I went ahead and put the 19-inch stretchers in place, and that was easy enough. All I did was put the short side down, put the stretcher in place, make sure it was square to the face, and then glue it and shoot it in. And I did that on all the corners first, and then when I was done, I put in the 2 middle ones. And we're ready to go from there. Now we need to get a top set up for it. Okay, now we're going to lay out the top. So I've turned the basket upside down, so my top side is down on the tabletop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to install 2 pieces of plywood. These are 3 by 16 inches, so 3 inches wide, 16 long. And they're going to act as my table support. I'm going to install the table as 3 pieces. So we're going to have the center panel that holds the saw, then we're going to have 2 edge panels that just provide a little bit more support for the work material. I'm going to hold these pieces in using pocket screws. And you see I don't have any holes drilled yet, so I guess that means we're going to do a pocket screw demo next. Now, as I said in the previous video, there are several different pocket hole jigs that you can get on the market, and this is just one of them. This is the Craig Micro, and it just takes a little bit longer to set up than the other one I have, but it's still a real effective little jig, so let's use it first. Now, with this one, for the thickness of the workpiece that I'm using, I can clamp it right flush with the edge, and the position I want my pocket hole to be, I've got it flush with this edge. Now all I have to do is drill the hole. To drill the hole, and I'll hit that camera again. How about one more time? To drill the hole, I've got a step drill bit. Okay, the first step will drill the hole for the screw, and then the second step, which is about 3/8 inch, is going to widen that hole and then make the shoulders of it flat. because a pocket screw, as you can see right here, the head is flat on the bottom, like it has a built-in washer. So the shoulders that the bit cuts is going to provide a place for that to seat down and pull up into a nice tight joint. So now it's just a matter of drilling the hole. And that gives me a nice clean hole all the way down, good flat shoulder in there. So I'm going to do one over here, and then we'll use the other jig on this end. And once again, nice clean hole. Now we're ready to go the other way. You can see that this one is a bit more of a production. It's a nice, almost stationary jig. I've got it mounted to a plywood work surface here. And the big difference is, instead of clamping the jig to the workpiece, you clamp the workpiece into the jig. Now this one is the Harbor Freight version. You can also buy a Craig version that does the exact same thing, that has 2 drilling jigs in it, and we'll clamp the workpiece right up like that. And now we go. And once again, 2 nicely drilled pocket holes. Now I'll take care of the other piece and get it assembled and come on back. All right, now I've got my two supports screwed into place. Now the space on these supports, I came up with kind of hit and miss. Basically, I spaced them out far enough that I can get my saw rocked into place. If I can find my saw, there it is. Okay, remembering that the saw has got a motor body connected to it, and it's got to be able to fit through the hole in order to use it, so I had to space them out far enough that I could rock it into place, just like this. So, rocks right on down, so when it's in the panel I can get it in and still use it. So now it's just setting up where that panel is going to go. And if you look closely here, you'll see I've drawn a line 3/4 of an inch from the inside edge here. And you'll recall, as we were setting it up, I made that edge flush. I shouldn't say flush, but perpendicular to the feed side. This is my feed side of the table. So I know that's 3/4 of an inch all the way down. So when I put my table in place, all right, right along that line, then this edge is going to be square with this edge. That was the word I was looking for, square. All right, so now all I want to do is get that thing set where I think it's going to be the best fit. Make sure I got it on the line properly. Now I'm going to clamp it into place so I can screw it down without having it move around on me. So there's one clamp down. there's my other clamp down. Now I'm ready to sink my screws. All right. As I said, supports are in. I've screwed the center panel in. Now it's time to lay out the saw. Now laying out the saw is actually pretty easy. Stick the saw in. I'm going to butt it up against this far panel here, because when I turn it upside down, that's going to be on my waist side of the blade. From the back, I want it to sit about, somewhere around an inch off the outfeed table. So there we go. There's about an inch off the outfeed table. And now I'm going to just take a couple of waste blocks and I'm going to glue them in place. And these will just be the stops for when I take the saw on and off. I've always got the same reference points getting it back on. And then to bind it down this time, I'm going to use the same kind of binder I used on the jigsaw when we did that a couple of videos ago. Now, I'm not above drilling holes in the footplate of the saw and just using screws, nuts, and washers straight into the plate of the saw. But if you don't want to do that, not everybody likes modifying their tools. We've always got the lock blocks. And they just fit over the edge of the frame, and then you screw them into place. Now, when I put these things down initially, I usually put them down, and then I run a bead of hot glue along the back edge of them, along the back edge of them, and that'll kind of keep them in place until I get the first screw into it. That's just a little technique. You don't have to do that if you don't want, but it helps hold it in place until you get the screws set the first time. And after that, you've got the hole drilled, you've got the hole through the block, and it'll go together just naturally. All right, so let me get it all put together, get the saw set up, ready to go, and I'm actually going to, when I've got the saw in place, I'm going to turn it on, and I'm just going to let it plunge down through, and we're going to get our plunge cut done. And after that, we're ready to actually do some sawing so we can finish up this thing. So, hang on. All right, my saw is mounted. I've done my plunge cut, so I've got my slot in the top plate. Now, believe it or not, we can actually start using this for part of this project. I want to put 2 more edge pieces here. However, to do that, I also want to leave a groove in between. So I take a couple pieces of wood that are of equal thickness and just use these as spacers. And going to throw one edge there. I'm going to throw one edge here. Kind of line them up a little bit. And now I'm not even going to do a lot of measuring. All I'm going to do is run a line down the edge of each. And now I'll measure from the edge to that line, and I'm going to use this saw to cut these guys up. Now I should be using a plywood blade here. This is a ripping blade, combination blade. Okay, so I'm not going to do it the right way this time. If I was to use a plywood blade, my cuts would come out a lot smoother. However, I'm ripping along the grade on this one, so I'm not going to get this kind of tear out that you see here on this back edge. You know how nasty that is. I'm not going to get that with a rip cut. So I should be okay. So let's measure these guys up. What I do with that. And I don't expect it to be a very even cut, so I'm going to use metric here. And that is 16 millimeters all day long. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to mark my waist edge, and I'm going to set up a fence. However, to make that cut and do that fence, I'm going to just stick a board here so the fence has something to rest on. All right, I've got my fence set up, so it is 16 millimeters from the fence to the inside tooth here, and I made sure it's on both ends so I don't bind up when I'm cutting through. I'm not going to pinch the wood down. I've checked my workpiece against it and made sure that I'm coming down on the line where I want to be. Now it's just a matter of making the cut. Got my hearing protection on. I got my push stick. No fingers getting stabbed. I might want to drop the saw down just a little bit. Okay, and I'm still in the right spot. Now it's time to cut. By the way, I should mention that I've got the power switch on the saw lashed down with a bicycle toe strap. Those things come in handy, even though I don't have toe straps on my bicycle anymore. They're all clipless nowadays. All right, now I got to set up for the next cut, and I'll be back when it's all ready to go. That'll do. Now, with my spacers in place, I can go ahead and shoot my table down on both sides, and then we can cut the rails that we're going to use later on when we build a crosscut sled. So that's coming up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, you watched me cut a couple of thin plate pieces of plywood with this saw. Now, how about a piece of, well, this is basically 1x1. I'm going to make the runners for a crosscut sled. So I'm basically going to split this guy in half. I've already got my fence set up 3/8 or thereabouts from my blade. Now it's just time to make the cut. That will definitely work. All right, so we cut some plywood. We cut some pine 1x1. How about a 2x4? Up next, 2x4. Okay, some nice 1x2s now. So, as promised, we've got a saw that we can rip material on. We've made a couple of channels in it, so at some point we're going to be able to do some crosscuts on it. That's not all I promised on this. Because I recall saying that we were making a saw that was also a bit of a storage solution. So let me make sure that's unplugged. and unclamp from my work table. So when you're all done with your project, and it's time to put things away, let's see. Tighten that down pretty good. Oh, because I'm trying to go the wrong way? No, I wasn't. I just tightened it down real good. So let's get this saw up out of the way. And start putting a few things away. So at the end of the project, you've got some place to put all these tools that we would use in the course of a normal project. Where did I put my router? So you get everything put away and you're ready to store it. So that's about it for this portion of the saw. We still have to make the crosscut sled. What else have we got to do? Well, there's all kinds of stuff we can do. So you stay tuned, come back and see me, and until then, y'all keep up the good fight. Bye.